This is Duke University.
All black, everything, everything black, culture over everything, y'all, we taking it back, black.
Welcome to Left to Black. I'm your host, Anthony Neal, and we are here on location in Cambridge, Massachusetts, at Harvard University, at the W.E.B. Du Bois Institute, and specifically in the HipHop Archive. And we are joined today by Professor Marcyliena Morgan, who's the Executive Director of the HipHop Archive. How are you doing today,
Very
Marcy?
well. It's great to have you here. Great to be here.
You know, I've had the chance to visit the space many times, and it's such an amazing space. I want to thank you for allowing us to spend some time with you and to shoot here at the archive.
It's our pleasure. Very happy that you're here.
This is a really celebratory time, you know, here at the Du Bois Institute, right? On the one hand, there'll be the dedication of the Hutchins Center for African and African American Studies, but of course the big news here at the Hip Hop Archive is the announcement of the Nasir Jones Fellowship. Talk a little bit about what your vision has been for the archive. I mean, this isn't brand new to you, right? This is something that has been part of your vision of thinking about hip hop studies for some time. So, you know, take us on a little trip about where this begins.
You know, it's so interesting because I, for the press conference, I thought, let me just do the entire history because I never really go back to how it actually started. And it actually started in the late 90s when I was at UCLA, a professor at UCLA, and students were graduating, and I taught a course called Urban Speech Communities, and in the course Urban Speech Communities, at that time there were maybe 300 students, and they did group projects, and many of them did group projects associated with hip hop, which I didn't see coming at that moment, and when it was over, they brought me all sorts of things. They brought me peace books with tagging in it. They brought all sorts of things associated with hip hop, saying, you know, I know that my parents are going to throw it out when I leave the house. You know, it's in the garage, it's going to take up space, and they're just going to toss it. And this is really important. This was the first time that, and they would have all of these stories about, this was the first time somebody did this, and this album represents that, and this represents, and my background's at anthropology, and I knew it was material culture. I didn't think of it in any other way, and I thought, well, I can't, eventually I'll take a look at it. And then suddenly I had all this stuff. And I thought, well, then we have to do something with it, you know. And so the notion of the archive began to develop at that particular time.
This is the late 1990s, Marcy, right? And we can all remember that moment. We're still fighting with folks over the rationale for even offering courses that have content that includes some form of hip hop. You're talking about developing an archive, right, in the late 1990s. How are some of these institutions responding?
Well, I think it's important to think about the institutions and all of its layers, okay? Because when we first started, we had to own our own server. And at that time, you could actually do that. And we did that because the dean, the sort of intellectual side of the university, they raised their eyebrows, but they're like, okay, let's just see what's going to happen. But it took a lot more support than the deans and the faculty. And we constantly were losing our signal. We weren't getting the kind of upgrade and support we needed for the site, and we realized, this is hip hop. We're going to have to do this on our own. There's no excuse.
Thank you. Yeah.
There's no excuse for not getting this done. Just because they won't do it doesn't mean we can't do it. And then all these people appeared who had various skills, who got us set up, got us going, started working on this, various aspects of it, incredibly committed. And it helped me understand that the way to do the archive was to have constant collaboration with the young people as they move through their involvement, whether it's in education or hip hop and what have you, because that is the way to understand how to keep it going and to deal with the institutional setting that may resist what is going on, to make it hip hop in this institutional setting.
You're watching Left to Black. I'm your host, Mark Anthony Neal. We're joined today here at Harvard at the W.B. Du Bois Institute in the HipHop Archive with Professor Marcyliena Morgan, who's a professor of African American Studies here at Harvard and also the executive director of the HipHop Archive. Talk about the Nasir Jones Fellowship. The idea of hip hop emerging to the point that, it becomes the foundation, for one, for giving, for development in the institution, but also to name something of someone of that stature that's going to provide for younger scholars and artists to be able to come to the archive in the future. Talk a little bit about, how that developed.
I think that what the fellowship itself means is that it is, I think, a very important statement that what we mean by scholarship, what we mean by, in hip hop parlance, knowledge, is something that we don't take for granted, that we build on, that we respect, and we respect all of it. And so, on the one hand, you can say there's this elite notion of a Harvard and knowledge, and on the other hand, you can say there's a sense that the scholarship and knowledge that comes out of all institutions should be, that we should have access, that everyone should have access to that, and have a way to think about it and negotiate and make sure that they're involved, not only in consuming it, but participating in the development of it. And I think that the Nasir Jones Fellowship very strongly sends out the signal that that's what we're talking about, that's really what the future of scholarship is, not just in the US, but in the world, that we're really talking about high level, in the hip hop sense, the highest possible level of scholarship and collaboration and critique, and all those things that have kept hip-hop relevant throughout the world and going and incredibly creative, that we are very much talking about. Let's look at scholarship in that way, and let's deal with the whole concept of that our expectation is that it is going to be the highest possible level, that it is about merit, and that everybody should have access to this who can actually do this work.
Now, the Nasir Jones Fellowship is just the naming of a fellowship that has existed here at the archive for some time. Can you talk a little bit about some of the folks who've come through in the past as HipHop Archive Fellows, and what kind of work they've done here? What kind of things have kind of been produced by time that folks have been able to spend here? Well,
essentially there are maybe three types of fellows in terms of their interest in the contribution they're making. One I'd like to just think of as the International Fellow. And the International Fellow, let me just say that my philosophy is based on a system of reciprocity. That is, that no matter what you come here with, there's something that you're also giving. And it's an exchange, because we're really interested in you, but we're not complete unless we're exchanging it. It's just like it's that conversation. It's the understanding of what we can learn and what you can learn. It's all of us doing that. So that in terms of the international fellows that have come, one in particular, Jacqueline Santos from Brazil, most amazing contribution to the archive you can imagine. I know that very often she thinks her time here was really important to her growth, and I'm sure it was, but to our growth as well. Really, in terms of a better understanding of what's going on in hip hop in Brazil, and the diversity of what's going on in the many areas, and also understanding race in other ways, and being in tune to what's going on in that particular context. And so we have our international students, the fellows. the first fellow was actually Theodore Miller, who did got his law degree from Harvard in real estate law, and was always interested in African American communities and real estate, but from the notion of, well, who gets housing? How does housing work? Who actually is able to buy this housing? How does the money exchange go in various communities? And looking at that from a very strong sense of hood and neighborhood that is in hip hop. So hip hop was the main source of his inspiration in terms of understanding what he was doing, what he was looking at. And so, you know, not only did we learn a lot, but this is also at a time when you have a lot of athletes coming into communities and, you know, opening up franchises and doing all sorts of things, and a particular kind of critique on how to understand that in terms of economic development in hip hop and communities. And then we have I would call your traditional, well, they're actually four, I think I might have said three. You have your traditional scholars who are doing research and are thinking about things. And one of the things that really encouraged me in the beginning of understanding what kind of information I need to collect and materials I need to collect, archive, is that I very much believe, as hip hop believes, in that there are standards. It's like, you know, there are all sorts of terms in hip hop for bad lyrics, bad this, you know, and it changes across generation what the terms are, but it's like the expectations are incredibly high. They may even be a bit unrealistic. But being unrealistic means you're going to get something really, really amazing when it happens.
You're watching Left of Black. We're here in Cambridge, Massachusetts, at Harvard University, at the W.E.B. Du Bois Institute, here at the HipHop Archive. We're sitting here with the Executive Director, Professor Marcyliena Morgan. Where do you see the archive 5 years down the road?
You know, I think I love that question, because I see the archive as still standing, number one, but in a different space in a way, in that the archive is really about facilitating a combination of the build, respect, represent that you see when you come in here, but also this notion of from the talented attempts to the new end theory. Yeah, and it's absolutely about the highest level of knowledge and scholarship and how to continue to develop that. Because I know that knowledge, education can be elite, but I think what we're saying here at the archive is that we're talking about something that is not elite. What it is it's real in the sense of it's based on hard work, a lot of collaboration, things that are relevant to what your interests are and what's going on in the world, and what we hope to continue to build on and build on and build on. So this notion of the new end theory is really about redefining what it means to be at the top of your game intellectually and in scholarship. The archive really is, in some respects, the academic version of the ultimate cipher, you know. It's the practice. It's the think tank. It's the, whether it's a soiree, a salon, or whatever it is. It's like, we're going to do this, and we're going to keep doing it to get it, not just to get it right, but also because it's what we do. It's who we are. Learning and talking about ideas, that's just the coolest thing.
And implementing those ideas in the world to make a difference.
Because I think society ran, game on, especially the African American community, at a point saying, you all don't care about education. Y'all don't want to learn. You don't want to do this. And when people used to ask me questions about that, and I would say, really, have you actually ever met a black person who didn't want to know how to read.
Or didn't want to know, or didn't want to work.
Right.
I mean, that's the irony of like even how we discuss hip hop. So much about hip hop discourse is about folks being on their ground, on their hustle, trying to work, not waiting for the state to come in, right? But
Right.
literally, and it's
Right.
it's all packaged up
It's
in
like,
what we know
and you
as
have to
hip-hop.
tell people, come on, think about it. Have you ever actually seen that?
Right, right.
Who doesn't want to know how to do that?
something,
Nobody
right.
wants to like not
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Not knowing is like, in the neighborhood, people like, I've heard that knowing. It's we expect you to have common sense. We expect you to also like know something.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So it can get really, really frustrating, and it's just like when people say, well, why is it at Harvard? Why isn't it whatever? And I look at them and I let them just say everything they're saying, and I'm saying, so explain to me, so where do you want it to be?
Right.
You think it shouldn't be here. Well, where do you
should
think it should be?
Right.
Because it's like, think about what you're saying.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is, we've heard it so much, we don't realize that we've really incorporated that kind of logic. But that's not, we have to fight that. And it's not always easy, but we have to think about it. And what I love about the Nasir Jones Fellowship is that he does not represent someone who came up in a system where you've got a label who's doing that and a so-and-so is doing that. He's someone who had to really think about who he was. He had to really say, okay, this is my situation, this is my background, this is my neighborhood, and what am I doing as an artist?
Yeah.
And I appreciate artists who, at a very young age, get it. I don't expect a young, a 19-year-old to give me lyrics that are consistently ready for like an academic interpretation or something like that. I expect you to be 19. I expect you to be angry beyond belief at different times and to be heartbroken and to tell us about it and to
to be a little childish. I mean, all those things.
I expect that complex.
Right.
And what I love about Nas in particular is that, and we see him as he goes through all that, and there's a consistency in terms of the center of who he is, the soul of who he is. It doesn't shift. It's like you see this. And I think any young person who has a dream, whether it's to be, in science, math, anything in higher education, anything associated with life in general, whether it's to be the best landscaper. I'm right now into really incredible, like, you can actually, you know those plants that well. I mean, anything that you're like, I really want to do this. And there are people all around you saying, or, not this or that. I think he is such a powerful example of you keep moving, you keep going, and you think about that and develop. But you look at him and you're seeing who he is through every stage of his life. But there's that center and that sense of, I'm going to do this. And I hear all that, and sometimes I have to rethink, what I'm going to do around all of that. But I am consistently, like, I know who I am, I have a belief system. I'm always thinking about the world. If you look at just visually how he represented himself, it was, always, in terms of diversity, whether it's class, whether it's religion and all that. It's like all these things he's always grappled with. And so it's a great example of what it means, whether you're doing research and you're like working on a particular paradigm, and is it different from others? Do I keep going? Can I pass a test? And the voices that you're hearing, whether, can I do this and help my family at the same time? All those different levels that many of us have to deal with. Can I be in a family where I am not a racist, but my parents are? All of these things. Someone like Nas well, and Nas in particular, has really wrestled with those issues and talked about it and dealt with it. And, you know, if you think about, you know, the world is yours, that is just such a beautiful way to like enter into this particular space. Because when the fellowship was announced, I was absolutely shocked at the number of successful men in particular who sent me emails or did their Nas line and said thank you, thank you, you know, and how much they love Nas. These, I mean, I'm not talking about people who are doing okay. I mean, people who are doing very well, like Nas got me through, you know, Nas. And so I am so grateful that he was willing to do it, to associate with us, that the donor wanted, you know, it in his name and all those things, and we're, you know, incredibly proud of it.
My name is Anthony Neal. You've been watching Left to Black. We're here at Harvard University at the W.E.B. Du Bois Institute, here at the HipHop Archive. We spent some time today with the Executive Director, Professor Marcyliena Morgan. Thank you for joining us,
Thank you so much. This has been great. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Eric, you're a real life G for this one. Yeah. All black everything. All black, you know. All black in the name of all my black heroes. All black everything. All black polos. All black medallions, yeah. All black, you know, say. All black everything. All black, you know. All black in the name of all my black heroes. All black everything. All black polos.